everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. Today on the show, we have Penny White, I think now past CEO of NeonMind, which is a psychedelic company in Canada. They're currently producing kind of like functional coffee. So what that means is coffee with things in it that you would like. You might eat them as a supplement. It does things other than just making your brain go faster because there's caffeine. There's different types of, things like chaga, turmeric, things like that. I think I had some samples. They're pretty decent. And I had a big stain on my floor from some of the coffee with the turmeric. Pretty funny, but didn't stop me from drinking it. I love it. Anyway, they're an interesting company because this is what they're doing to kind of buy time while they work to develop psilocybin in some various ways. So it's going to be an interesting company. Definitely watch it. I think they just installed a new CEO just the other day. So I'm not totally up to speed. And this recording was from a little bit ago. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's it for the intro there. If you want to help us out, tell a friend about an episode that you loved. There's got to be at least one, right? If not, maybe go look through and see. And yeah, you can also leave small monthly donations at our Patreon page, patreon.com/psychedelics today. And what else is going on? Yeah, we've got our 8-week Navigating Psychedelics course coming up in March. I think we're probably 3/4 of the way sold out. So if you want to join us, please come over to psychedeliceducationcenter.com to learn more. It is available for CE for some professions, and we have all the info on that page there. And we're happy to answer any questions. So if you have any questions about it, hit us up. Psychedelics Today email at gmail.com. Kyle finally, I should have done this years ago, but we finally have an hour count on how much material is in there. It's about 42 hours of material if you join us for the live classes. I think 36 or so otherwise. So a ton of material. It's essentially like 2 or 3 courses at a school. And I'm just so proud of the class. I'm really excited about the people we attract to take it with us. So if you're interested, trying to find your place in the field, check it out. Navigating Psychedelics for Clinicians and Therapists. And we are also launching a shorter 5-week edition taught by Alyssa Gursky and our audio editor, Rob Sarabia. And it's going through a ton of similar content, but the focus is around finding your place in the field. So you're a student or a young professional trying to figure out where to go. And this course is trying to give you kind of an overview of what's available out there in psychedelia. You know, as Kyle and I say, it's everything from accounting to marketing to therapists to, janitors. There's so many needed people to support this thing going forward. Evangelists, writers, researchers, theorists. There's so much room. And the amount of clinical need that's going to be on the table in the next, 10 years is going to be outrageous. COVID has been really tough on humans and, not just, killing and hurting people. It's psychologically very tough. So there's going to be a lot of need. So we need everybody we can get. And we also need to do it in a really smart way. So we think this is a great way for you to kind of orient and figure out where you want to go. And Alyssa and Rob teach it. Kyle and I may or may not pop in here and there, but you can learn more about that class at psychedeliceducationcenter.com. And it's called Navigating Psychedelics for Students and the Psychedelic Curious. So go check that out. And on the 12th, we actually have a film screening with Light Years director, filmmaker, Colin Thompson. It's going to be fun. That's free. You should watch the film before. It's kind of like a DIY thing. And then come over to the live panel. We're going to do it at around, 8 o'clock Eastern on Friday the 12th. So hope to see you there. And I think that's enough for now. Thanks for hanging out for this long intro and enjoy this interview with Penny White. See ya. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. Today on the show, we have Penny White, CEO, founder, and president of NeonMind, a interesting Canadian psychedelic company. Thanks for joining us, Penny.
Hi, Joe, and thank you for having me.
Really, really excited to dig in. So we haven't had too many, CEOs, presidents, or founders of psychedelic businesses on the show, mainly because for a long time there weren't any, and now there's a bunch. And I want to be selective. So, like, I saw your profile and was interested, and kind of wanted to dig into you, your business, and what you're up to up there in Vancouver.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. So, I guess before we dig into NeonMind, can you just tell us a little bit about your background before you jumped into this psychedelic worldview or
Yeah,
business land?
sure. So, interestingly enough, I don't actually have an education background in science, but I'm classically trained as a lawyer, and I was actually a corporate and securities lawyer for 20 years. And I'd say in the past 5 or 6 years, I've sort of focused on my own deals, mostly in the capital markets, so taking companies public. And in the past 10 years, I probably have experience with about 6 or 7 deals that I was, had a key role and took public, and anything from pharmaceuticals to biotech to entertainment, and then kind of all kinds of areas, even sort of gold mining and stuff like that. So it kind of covered a lot of different things. And then really for the past 3 years, I've been focused on running this company called Better Plant Sciences, which it started off in the cannabis industry. And about a year and a half ago, we said, I noticed what was happening with psychedelics, and I've always been fascinated by psychedelics. And I saw sort of an opportunity to develop a business there. And so that's when we started NeonMind Biosciences, which was actually started as a subsidiary of Better Plant, which is a public company. And really just looking at some of the research we'd been looking at with some of the doctors and scientists at the University of British Columbia that were looking to treat addiction with CBD.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of starting to talk to them about, well, have you guys looked at psychedelics? And, do you think that would work for addiction? And got that conversation started a year and a half ago. And so, started the company, and now here we are.
That's fantastic. And I'm seeing on the Better Plant Sciences website that you're not purely, NeonMind is not purely a psilocybin business. You've got some kind of consumer stuff with like lion's mane, ashwagandha, stuff like that too, right?
Yeah, we actually decided to go with an angle of focusing on mushrooms, be them medicinal mushrooms that don't get you, high, or just like psychedelics, which do. So we've got kind of those two business divisions, and the short-term revenue, immediate revenue stream is the mushroom coffees that actually we just launched last week. And I think our website launches tomorrow. So that's neonmind.com. And we have 4 amazing coffees. I'm drinking one right now. And it's just, these medicinal mushrooms, they have so many great benefits. When you put them in your coffee and you drink them, you feel amazing. So they're kind of cool. It's just a fun thing. But it generates revenue for the company. And then our sort of long-term plan is to develop a drug to treat weight loss and obesity using psilocybin.
Oh, that's great. So I heard that you were just able to now start preclinical trials. Is that right?
Yeah. So it was a long time to get everything through all the approvals that were required by the University of British Columbia. And we're also working with the Women and Children's Hospital in Vancouver. And then we had to get approval from Health Canada, and we had to find the right supplier. So it's amazing how far things have come in the past year, because when I first started, there was no supplier of psilocybin in Canada. Right. So things have really, really progressed. And, I think we were one of the first applications to be made to Health Canada for this kind of thing. And now, everything's been approved. And so we've actually started our preclinical work.
That's outstanding. So is preclinical largely just safety data on animals, or are you able to work with people?
We're actually starting trials to see how psilocybin can reduce obesity and increase weight loss in animals. So we've started that now over at the University of British Columbia, and we're the sponsor for this research. And so that's going to go on probably for the next 3 or 4 months. But we actually are going to start to see some data come out in a couple of weeks.
Mm. Well, that's outstanding. I'm really happy to hear that.
It's really exciting.
Are you using whole plant philosophy cubensis? Are you doing an extract or a pure
Yeah, you know what?
chemical?
I would have loved to do the whole plant. And just at the time when we needed to find our supply, nobody in Canada had a license to grow psilocybin. So, although it was legal to research it and use it, you couldn't actually grow it. So, just very recently, a company called Numinous became the first Canadian company to legally be allowed to grow psilocybin
Mm.
mushrooms. But we ended up, we had to put all this together months ago. So, we signed a deal with Cygen, who was operating in Alberta, and they're trying to get their dealer's license so that they can, provide sort of large scale psilocybin that they've created. So it's synthetic, but it's pure psilocybin, and so that's what we're using right now. Ultimately, it'd be really cool if we could use the full plant.
And what was that project like working with Health Canada to get these approvals? Was it kind of back and forth and really slow? Were they hesitant for any kind of weird political reasons?
It was kind of interesting because at first we thought we had to apply for a Section 56 exemption, which is kind of the standard for being allowed to use a restricted substance for a scientific purpose. And when we looked into the application, it was remarkably simple. And so the main investigator that we had chosen to work on this, he submitted it, and we hadn't yet signed our agreement with UBC, and so we were kind of just trying to get a jump start on that. And they came back and they said, you don't need a Section 56 if this is being done by the university, because they don't need an exemption, they just need permission. And they said, we just need a letter from the dean, and the letter from the dean came, and then Health Canada granted it. So I think if you're doing, if it's the university that's doing the research, then really Health Canada has no issues at all.
That's incredible. And you're affiliated with UBC?
Well, personally, I am alumni. That's
Okay.
where I went to law school. But almost all of the doctors that we're working with and the scientists are affiliated with UBC in one way or another. And so our principal investigator, Alistair Barr, he is part of the faculty there. And we actually signed a fee-for-service agreement with the University of British Columbia, and we're paying them to do the trials. And it's being done, on their campus at Dr. Barr's clinic, or in his lab.
Oh, it's really, really amazing. Wow. So in Health Canada got back to you and just said you're good to go because it's a university. There was no like kind of crazy let's do in the US we always do these hearings, right? Like you get like 20 people grilling an
Oh yeah,
individual.
we actually, it's kind of funny because we filed a prospectus and we plan to do an IPO, which we're still doing. Maybe by the time this airs, we will have completed that. I hope
Nice.
so. But one of the comments from the commission, the Securities Commission, was, "You're doing what?" Like they said, "We don't think this is in the public interest. And do you really think that Health Canada is going to give you permission for this?" And they had all these questions for us saying, when has Health Canada ever done anything like this? Why would you think this would be in the public interest? And so on. And we were kind of defeated because we thought, oh my gosh, like if they don't think Health Canada is ever going to do it, like, are we being too optimistic here? And, we had contracted with a CRO, like a contract research organization that had given us advice, and they said, "Oh yeah, it'll happen." But I was starting to wonder if that was bad advice. So then, when we submitted it, it says they'll get back to you within 60 days. And sure enough, day 50, they got back to us, and they said, they said, "Well, you've actually asked for the wrong thing." And we thought, "Oh, are they playing games with us?" And they said, "Oh, just give us a letter from the dean saying that the dean of the University of British Columbia supports your research initiatives." And we got an amazing letter. And about a week later, we got our approval.
Wow. That's really cool. So I think what that shows is that the government isn't necessarily against this all the time. And there's people who just want the process to be followed as opposed to any
Yeah.
kind of like serious, I don't know, ethical dilemma for them or something,
Yeah. I mean, it was refreshing to see how quickly it all happened. But I think, in general, Health Canada is super supportive of all research and development. And the University of British Columbia, is very interested in pursuing research that's going to help people. And, it's really interesting research. And our principal investigator, Dr. Barr, he's worked with restricted substances before. And, he's run trials, and, he has a great background, and he's written many papers, and as do many of the scientists on our team. So I think that helped a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Now, for the weight loss protocol, are you planning to pair, or I guess, what does the treatment look like? Are you able to share any of that?
Yeah. So, when we filed our patents, we were looking at two possible scenarios. One is doing the full dose with psychotherapy,
Hmm.
um, to treat your weight loss, and kind of combining that. And then we also filed a patent on the potential for the microdosing, smaller doses, taking, say, 3 days on, 2 days off, or some kind of combination like that, to help you lose weight. And so we're just still finalizing our protocols for our phase 2 trial, but we're leaning towards something along the lines of we'll do maybe 12 to 16 weight loss psychotherapy sessions, which will include at least one psychedelically assisted session with a full dose of psilocybin.
Okay, it's like similar dosages to like Hopkins or something.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
Yeah.
all the research that's out there that shows, how much it helps mood disorders and stuff. Well, that, we think that will apply for obesity as well, because a lot of times it has to do with making poor decisions because there's something going on with mood or with depression or with the brain. And so that's what we're going to try. That's kind of what we're playing with. We haven't finalized all of that. And I think the experiments we're doing now in the preclinical trial, that's going to inform some of what we're writing. But I think it's about, I've been told it's about 80 to 90 hours of our lead guys just sitting down and writing out everything that they've been, working on for the past few months. And really the past year, and then sort of putting it into a form that's ready to submit as an application in, say, early 2021.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, and I like how it's not necessarily, 12 high dose sessions. I think
Oh
that's a
gosh.
great, you know,
Well, it would be outrageously expensive. I think,
right.
ideally we're looking at, well, if you do 3, that looks really great. Like, you probably have a higher success rate, but the cost goes up exponentially every time you add one of those dose sessions. So it may only be 1. And I think with 1, it looks like that gives you, the kind of evidence you need. But if we can get away with doing 2, and so that it's not outrageously expensive, I think that would probably give us better results. That's what it looks like based on the research, in other people's studies.
Mm, that's great. So how would you plan on kind of going to market? Do you think you'll start with like centers, or like will you kind of license the technology out maybe?
All of that stuff is really interesting because things are changing
Hmm.
monthly. I mean, last
Yes.
week, psilocybin became legal in Oregon, so that was a big change.
Hmm.
And I don't know how the laws are going to change, or if they're going to change in Canada or the U.S. It's not really legal to do psychotherapy with psilocybin right now in Canada. So I guess I'm thinking about whether there's anything we could do, before we get all the way through phase 3. There might be, things we can do if the laws change, but exactly how we're going to roll this out commercially, ideally, it would be a combination of treatment with an ongoing microdose.
Mm.
That that's our ideal situation. Whether we can really afford all the trials necessary to get there, we'll see. And at some point, you know, 10 to $15 million into this, if we get that far, we're probably going to need some help of a much bigger company to make it to the next stage.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But you're looking forward to an IPO, so I'm sure people are watching.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're going public, and that gives us access to capital. But sometimes you want to work with big pharma to get all the way to the finish line.
Oh, I totally understand that. Are some of your organizations already being traded publicly?
Yeah, Better Plant Sciences is a publicly traded company. It's listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange, and the symbol's PLNT. We're also traded in the US and in Germany, and we've been public for about 2 years.
Oh, great. Great. Yeah, it's got to be a very interesting thing versus being a private company. But you've been living that for a while, I suppose.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's second nature to me, and it definitely is a different type of existence. I don't wish it on everyone. You really have to be you have to be trained. You have to be used to it. I mean, every step we make, every word we say, it's regulated by gazillions of laws, and we have to be careful how we disclose things and so on. But I enjoy it. I mean, it's really nice to think that our company's owned by 10,000 shareholders, and that anybody can buy stock. It's not limited to like a select number of people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of nice. Like this, I was watching the investment world pretty closely for a number of years, and I was kind of really bummed out by this idea of you had to be like an accredited investor to get into some situations.
Yeah.
And the public really just addresses that head on.
Well, that's the cool thing about a public company is people, anybody can invest, and you don't have to have like a minimum amount. Like people actually go in with their online accounts, and sometimes they spend $50 buying some shares. And I know that because I've been involved in a proxy battle before where I had to call people, and they told me, I have 100 shares, and I'm going to vote for you or I'm not going to vote for you. But it's really, really interesting, just talking to different people who just for as part of their investment strategy, and sort of in a way partly for fun, they just go online, they look at different companies and different industries they're interested in. They invest through their online brokerages, which anybody can do. And it's cool for, I think, younger people who are coming of age and having money for the first time and deciding what to do with it. And people that are just like interested in promoting things they believe in. So, it's an opportunity for people to say, I love the idea of psychedelics becoming legal or becoming available as drugs to help humanity. And so I'm going to buy some of this stock. It's empowering in a way.
Right. 10 years ago, the only way to make money on psychedelics was to buy a lot and resell them. Now
Yeah.
it's a little different, right? You can spend $50 or whatever.
Yeah, you can probably still do that.
Yeah, you still can. But yeah, it's a great way to, keep money out of, cash and be invested in psychedelics. It's kind of crazy just how many psychedelic companies have become public in the last even 3 months, 2 months.
Oh yeah. Well, it's also kind of mind blowing that it is where it is, and it's being accepted by society in the way that it is. I mean, to me, it still feels like it wasn't that long ago when cannabis got legalized, and that blew me away. It was like all of a sudden, what? It's legal in some states, and now it's fully legal in Canada. Never saw that coming, when as a kid. And definitely, I just didn't really see psychedelics being adopted so quickly. And I know it's not legal for recreational use in Canada or the U.S., but even things like, the state of Oregon adopting it the way they have and legalizing it, if it's supervised, and just all the preclinical trials and really the openness of the FDA to support various psychedelic trials and designate the breakthrough therapy status, it kind of blows my mind.
Yeah.
I think it's happening fast.
It's happening really fast. And it's, because there was such a federal, at least in the US, resistance to research on this. It wasn't impossible to get licensed to do research. It was just really hard. Now that that's kind of over, and there's so many tenacious people out there willing to put in the time, and now investors and businesses, people are getting paid to do this. It just, I think the floodgates have broken, and more people are coming now that it's not as restricted. And kind of like Hopkins, I think Rick Strassman did a lot of groundbreaking work, and many others. It's just great that we're here finally.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, the authorities in the 60s and the 70s, they did a pretty good job of scaring people into kind of, I guess, into hiding. And it's sort of tragic that, it is tragic that
Yeah.
psychedelic research was put on hold for so long, when now we can look at it and say, wow, like, do psychedelics, is it possible we can really fight some of modern society's biggest challenges? And it really does look like we can. I mean, there's drug addiction, there's mental suffering, there's the potential to treat cravings, which I think everybody fights one way or another. And then just the transformative element, and the spiritual element. It's pretty exciting, I think the potential of psychedelic.
Yeah. Was there a particular study for you that made you get really interested?
I think, it might have even been Michael Pollan's book
Right.
that I first really got me understanding, the full spectrum of what had happened, other than just sort of always being very, very interested in it, just in terms of thinking, this is something that's super cool, and why is it illegal? And just kind of thinking that the government would always keep it far away from everybody, and thinking that the government was mistaken in doing that. But I've always been fascinated by the potential of some of these restricted substances, including cannabis, right? Which is something that I've been sort of immersed in for several years.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. The Pollen book really did change the game. I read it. I think I bought it on Audible like as soon as it came out. Like what was that? 2017 maybe.
Oh yeah, yeah. I listened to it while I was working out, which was kind of cool, and yeah, it was really well written, and it just told such a great story. I think that really had a significant impact on opening up everybody's mind to psychedelics, and what they could do.
Right. Absolutely. I I feel like a lot of our mission at psychedelics today is kind of like clearing up maybe some of the stuff that he put in there that wasn't totally accurate. I still think it's probably the best popularizer to date, but I can't call it perfect. Like he's an excellent writer, writes
Oh
great
yeah,
books. I think I've
yeah,
read all his books, honestly,
yeah. And then
including the new caffeine one.
yeah, like the history part was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think a lot's happened since he's written the book, and people's opinions of where psychedelics is going and how it should be used and stuff. Definitely, that's progressed and changed a lot. You can just imagine the amount of research and that's been done over the past 3 years, even.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of developments, stuff that he probably couldn't even have predicted. I saw that he was now attached to the University of California, Berkeley site.
Oh, okay.
That's been launched to research psychedelics.
There was
that's
another
where he lives.
movie. There was another movie I saw, which was really cool. It's called Dosed. Have
That
you
was
seen
really
it?
nice from your city.
Yeah, I was from Vancouver, and Vancouver has such a huge drug problem. So I'm originally from Toronto. When I moved to Vancouver for law school over 20 years ago, I was really shocked that there was this part of the city where people are just sitting, on the corners doing drugs, and there's so many people, and there's young people that just get lost to the streets. And it's just really shocking to me, and it's always been something I thought we should be doing more as a society to address. And that's why it was a couple of years ago I started talking to Translational Life Sciences, which is a company we bought part of, who are kind of designing our trials, and because they were putting together clinical trials to treat addictions in the Lower East Side of Vancouver, and there was hospitals involved in the university and everything else. And I just thought, wow, you could use one drug to cure an addiction to another drug. That's amazing. So I really love that idea. And then when I saw Dosed, it just kind of opened my eyes, and I thought this really, really could work. Like this could really be a cure for opiate addiction and heroin addiction and cocaine, which is such a huge problem. And in Vancouver, so many people die every month from overdoses, and it's young people too. It's people of all ages, but I know everybody in Vancouver knows somebody who's died of an overdose who's like under 25, which is heartbreaking. And so when I saw Dosed, I thought, oh, this is going to change everything. Like people are really going to be excited about psychedelics and what they can do.
Have you talked to a lot of people who've seen that movie?
I think in Vancouver, a lot of people have seen it,
Hmm.
and I think just people agree it's a great movie, and I don't know how many people have seen it outside though. Like I feel like it needs to be seen by more people.
Right. Yeah, I should probably sponsor a screening of that.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, we did one recently with another film, and went really well. I barely marketed it and sold a ton of seats, so I should probably do that just to amplify their message. Um,
Yeah.
I was, yeah, really impressed with the hard work they put in, and the fact that the filmmakers knew almost nothing about psychedelics on their way in was kind of wild. Even I think
Yeah.
the subject of the film didn't know much, and they learned a lot on the way.
Right. Well, I mean, if you look 2 years ago, there weren't many people in the world who knew much about psychedelics. And I feel like a lot of people in the industry are just getting to know it because it's such a new thing, really.
Mm, true, true. Have you had a chance to interact with Gabor Mate? I think he's the biggest psychedelic celebrity in your city.
No, I haven't.
You familiar with him?
Little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, he's just an amazing medical doctor. I think the Canadian government kind of shut him down from facilitating ayahuasca work with struggling people in Canada.
Oh yeah, I did have a friend actually who totally cured his, or he was treated with ayahuasca, and he thought it really cured his drug addiction. So I have heard about that, but no, I never met him or
Yeah.
really
Well,
heard about him
it's
personally.
probably worth keeping on your radar. He's a fascinating guy. And, British Columbia is a really interesting place for psychedelics because I believe drug use is decriminalized in British Columbia, or at least Vancouver. Um,
Yeah, the Vancouver City Council voted, I think it was about a year ago, to basically to decriminalize psilocybin, so magic
mm,
mushrooms, and basically adopting a policy that they just weren't going to enforce any sort of criminal prosecution. And it's so what's happened
wow.
is people are selling them online. There's stores you can go to buy them. They're very widely available. Like sort of like the way that cannabis was available just before it went legal in Canada, which was pretty much it's as easy to get cannabis as it is to get sort of a cigarette or a pop.
Right.
And I feel like that's kind of how it is now with psilocybin.
Mm. I
And
guess,
there's
go
no
ahead.
criminal prosecution of any kind here.
That's amazing. Do you, I don't think we've actually talked about this in the show. You've been in cannabis for a little bit. Currently, from what I understand, there's now mail order cannabis, and there's also like you kind of go to the provincially licensed or operated liquor stores, and you can buy it there. Remember in Ontario, like LBCO was carrying it or something.
Yeah, it's the way that it rolled out in Canada was each province has different rules in terms of how they want to set up the retail end.
Uh,
In some provinces, it's run by the liquor boards. Some people would say it hasn't been the greatest rollout. But in Vancouver now, in British Columbia, there's lots of cannabis retailers. They're really nicely put together. They're well organized. They have great product. The product's come a long way in the past few years. So I think on the retail side, it's okay now, but it's a lot more interesting down in the States where it was a lot less regulated. Like I remember going down to, I think it was the state of Washington a couple of years ago and just going into one of the stores and there was like hundreds of brands, there was edibles, all kinds of cool topicals and so many interesting things. And if you go into one of our retail stores in Canada, it's like Apple. It looks like Apple, and you can't even touch it. And there's really not much selection. And then the packaging is all identical. You're allowed
mm,
sort of a very small logo. And the area that I was really interested in is topicals, because I met this Ayurvedic practitioner who put together these amazing cannabis formulations. So when you put them on your body, it just relieves pain. And I was interested in the pain relief because that's an alternate to using opiates to treat pain. And I thought we really need that. And then there's the older population that have aches and pains that need something to put on their body, which, relieves pain. And also just people who like to work out and stuff. And I don't know, have you ever used a topical with cannabis in it with THC?
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's a
Yeah,
ton of
'cause
different
it
ways to slice and dice those products too. It's crazy.
yeah, but it's like it works so well. Like it just melts your muscles if you're in pain. And so I was really excited about getting these amazing products into the market. We got them into the market in Oregon. It took us about a year. And like in Canada, it's just been so hard to get them to market because the regulations are so crazy that it ends up costing like an outrageous amount by the time the manufacturer meets all the regulations and so on, that when we put the pricing model together, it just doesn't work. So we haven't launched those in Canada yet, but that's kind of where my passion in cannabis is in the products that you can kind of put on your body.
Mm. I recall at one point, my girlfriend used to run one of the first legal shops in Colorado, and she was selling a lot of these topical patches, transdermal patches. And this gentleman came in with Parkinson's, and he would pick up like a crazy amount of these patches. And all it took was a quarter of one of these patches on his body, and he was able to like not shake and to hold his grandchild. And I was
Yeah.
like, that is one of the biggest miracles I've ever heard of
Well,
in
it
this
really
space.
is. And people need that treatment. And it's still not readily available to all the people who need it, which is really too bad.
Mm. Are there transdermal products, not just lotions, available in Canada that you've seen?
I think the topicals market here has been so slow to roll out. I don't
Mm.
think I've seen a transdermal on the market yet. But last time I checked was a couple months. We were
Yeah.
looking into doing it, and then again, it just got so complicated and expensive with all the different levels that you had to pass through. But yeah, I think those are interesting. They work too.
Mm. Yeah. Like there's so many different ways to, I guess, apply or use drugs that it's kind of like endless, and that there's so many novel kind of formulations you could come up with to like do really interesting things.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm really excited about that.
I love thinking about the future. Like, let's look into the future in 5 years and imagine what kind of different psychedelics are going to be legally available and what kind of treatments are going to be available. And, if maybe it's 10 years, but, if just some of the trials that are going on now result in commercial drugs, or if the government's change their laws and make things, over the counter more easily available, it could really change, how people deal with things like depression and even maybe obesity. And these are huge problems that we're facing right now.
Massive. Yeah. Massive. Like I'm really interested in what like a psilocybin transdermal looks like. I'm sure people are investigating that, and like, what is it? We don't really have too much great clinical data, as far as I know, on
Yeah.
microdosing. Um,
No, there isn't. But it's really interesting because there's some indications that it makes you smarter, right?
right.
Or it can heal, cognitive impairment, or even
Brain
delay
injury.
dementia, which is
Hmm.
that kind of stuff is really interesting. Even regular mushrooms, like as I drink my mushroom coffee, there's so many different mushroom varieties that are unstudied as well, that aren't even psychedelic, that have all kinds of benefits for the brain.
Yeah.
Psychedelics and their effect on sort of cognitive enhancement or creative enhancement. I think there's going to be a lot more research done over the next decade about that. And who knows what people are going to come up with, and who knows what's going to be available to us as consumers, over the next decade. I think there could be some really interesting experiences coming our way.
Yeah. 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 I'm of the opinion that I don't want this stuff totally dominated by psychiatry. I would like to see it a lot more kind of egalitarian, available for religious purposes, recreational as well. Like I'm kind of trying to coin a new term, psychedelic maximalist or something. Like where it's not like, I don't want just medical legalization. I'm working for like, the whole working against the whole drug war. I would be really happy to see this stuff at, corner stores. Maybe you need a special license to buy it, but because
Yeah,
it's a little different than buying vodka, but perhaps
right,
safer.
right. But it's interesting. I think it's interesting what Oregon's done, because they actually
Yeah.
they haven't limited it to a medical purpose, right? They've just said that you have to be supervised and you have to be an adult. And I think that's a pretty open-minded way of dealing with it. So do you like what they're doing with that?
Um, I think it's a step in the right direction. Like I don't think it's the final answer, but I
Mhm.
like that it's, a step in the direction of, moving where science is.
Well, it's a huge step. And
Yeah.
just, in terms of psychiatry and going the drug route, I think, to recognize really that we're breaking through barriers right now. And so, everything that happens right now, every clinical study that commences or gets approved, every press release, everything that gets done, I think kind of moves the whole movement forward and helps everybody who's trying to progress psychedelics.
I think that's very true. Yeah. Like we need all these small wins. And
Yeah.
the small wins are in service of these bigger wins that we're hopeful for in the future. That yeah, totally. Like Oregon with their broad ranging drug decriminalization bill is also, pioneering in the direction of like Portugal, which had great success lowering drug harms for their population through decriminalization and spending more on treatment and services for people with substance use disorder.
Yeah, and recently the Canadian government's made it legal for certain people to access psilocybin for sort of end of life issues. So, and that's just in the past 4 months. So there's definitely progress happening here. I'm interested to see what else the Canadian government's going to do and if they take steps towards legalization.
I really wouldn't be surprised if they did that. It's kind of like time for them to do it in a lot of ways, but yeah, like once they get a few successes under their belts, and there's a lot of companies like yours who are really pushing for psilocybin to be prescribable, and I'm really excited to see what happens there. And I'm glad it's an international landscape now. It's not just the United States. I I always get a little frustrated when everybody looks towards the United States. They're like, oh, they're leaders in like drugs and safety. And I'm like, what on earth? Like, why would you look to us for leadership? Like, you guys,
Maybe now they can.
yeah,
Things have
right.
changed.
Maybe. So I have kind of an interesting question here. Since you've got a background in the law, got a lot of exposure to the law. I'm kind of curious about this idea of like IP in the psychedelic space. And like this is something that a lot of people are really freaked out about, but I think it's mainly because we're not so sure what IP means in like this psychedelic world.
Right. I mean, there's different types of intellectual property. Like, definitely, if you're creating a new compound, I mean, obviously, if you file a patent, you have that protection of that creation of that compound. Most of what we've filed so far, we haven't done anything in terms of creating new compounds. We're more or less. I mean, we have about 5 patents filed, and we're trying to demonstrate in our patents and get patents that say the use of psilocybin and other psychedelics for weight loss or obesity. That's what we're trying to prove out, and we want to bring a drug to market. And if we get our patents, then it means nobody else can market psilocybin in conjunction with weight loss or obesity, because that would contradict our patent. So it doesn't mean people can go out and grow, pick mushrooms from the ground and eat them. It doesn't mean we have any control over magic mushrooms. It just means on a commercial level. So for anybody that's trying to make money selling psilocybin, if we get those patents in relation to the marketing of psilocybin for obesity and weight loss, then we'll be able to. It'll be worth enough that it will make it commercially viable for us to take, to go all the way through to phase 2 and phase 3 trials to bring a drug commercially, or a drug and a treatment commercially. And I think that's sort of the whole foundation of patent law is you have to give some protection in IP. Otherwise, what's the reason that you're going out and doing all these trials?
Right. It's kind of a discussion around incentives. Like,
Yeah, we're still early stages, so it may be that I could see us teaming up with a company that has a unique delivery method, or maybe we may end up doing some compound work. Like we may end up looking at other mushrooms and maybe combining more than just one compound, psilocybin maybe being the key compound. So, we're still a pretty, we're still at the early stages of what we're doing, but by no means would we ever have any kind of a monopoly on the use of psilocybin. I mean, it's a plant, right?
Right. Totally. And that's, that's what does it cost to grow? Probably you can have a decent grow for under 100 US. And, it's kind of like shockingly decentralized in terms of like a drug. Like you can't do that with cocaine currently. Like you can't do
Yeah.
that with, any of the amphetamines yet, but you can do it with mushrooms. and thank
Yeah.
goodness it's mushrooms, right? Like that's one of the safer, better things to be out there in the wild.
Yeah, and I mean, psilocybin, like there's so much evidence out there to show that there's tremendous health benefits for
Hmm.
psilocybin. There's some toxicity as well, but there's so many different health benefits. People seem to really do better in life after they've had, a full dose of psilocybin, based on a lot of studies. But it still would be very cool if somebody who maybe doesn't know about that, that psilocybin exists, somebody would go to the doctor and say, I'm depressed, or, I have a crazy problem with eating and I'm overweight. If the doctor, that's their trusted health advisor, would say,
Mm.
okay, well, here's a prescription. It's something that you didn't know is, here's a prescription, go to your pharmacist, follow the normal route. And then they get something with psilocybin, or they go get a treatment with psilocybin. And so I think of that as another avenue of delivering wellness that wouldn't be available to a lot of people, because not everybody is willing to go out and pick psilocybin in the woods.
Right. Thankfully you live in an ecosystem where it kind of happens naturally. I have a
Yeah.
friend from Vancouver who used to, before middle school and high school, used to go out into the woods and actually fill up plastic bags of mushrooms. I think that's wild. He turned out okay. He's an adult now, owns a house, has kids. It's fine. But it's incredible that, this kind of thing can happen. Because, folks that don't live in those ecosystems have no clue that these things kind of just exist naturally.
And there's a
Um,
lot of people who really very almost religiously rely on the advice of their doctor. And
mm,
for them,
mhm.
health is going to your doctor and doing what your doctor says. And so a lot of people won't have access to alternative medicines unless they're prescribed by their doctor. So I think those
Right.
people benefit the most from, a drug that contains psilocybin that can be prescribed.
There's an interesting argument that I've been kind of in the middle of around kind of these folks that just don't really want there to be any psychedelic commercialization. And like a big portion of their argument comes back to some sort of like, you've got a sort of privilege by knowing you're a grower. And I kind of like criticize that of being like the farm to table model of psychedelics that's not really anywhere close to scalable or really helpful for the most unwell people who really need it.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of a weird argument, I think, because everything can be commercialized, and just because you could grow, carrots in the backyard doesn't mean you shouldn't be allowed to go buy them at the grocery store, right?
Right. Right. It's complicated. I dislike the argument. I just don't think it's complete. It's like there's so many people that don't know a chemist or a grower that,
Yeah,
how are you going to scale that to really heal people?
I mean, I guess it comes down to intent, right?
Mm,
And there's elements of psilocybin that have to do with spirituality, and I can see why it feels awkward to put a dollar on that and to put a cost to it. Like, I guess theoretically you could say when you go to church it's free, but is it free? I
not
don't know.
really. No.
Like, anytime people devote resources to anything, they somehow need to cover the cost of those resources. So I mean, you can get into a real debate of what commercialization means, and what is it really? Is it different than bartering? Is it different than going somewhere and picking mushrooms and making your own chocolate mushrooms, really, or just paying someone else to do it? Like, how different is it really?
Right. Exactly. Like I'm very happy to give drug dealers money most of the time. And that's a commercial transaction, it's not.
Yeah, it is. Now, whether you want the government to be controlling that transaction maybe is another question.
Right. Like I personally would love to have, high purity, the same way I can buy ibuprofen, acetaminophen, knowing that it's amazing MDMA or psilocybin, for instance. Like that would be amazing to me. But currently, given prohibition, that's not possible or feasible for most drug dealers to hit
Well, I
that.
mean, a lot of times when the government steps in, they're there to sort of regulate quality, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, and make sure that things are marketed properly and labeled properly. And, it might be a good thing that the government starts to sort of in the future regulate it so that you just click a button on your phone and it gets delivered to your door, and it's a brand name that you trust and exactly the amount you're expecting, and there's instructions that come with it.
Right. Totally. That would be pretty amazing, right? Like
Well, I think
instructions
it's going
don't really come with drugs too regularly, though I know some drug dealers are actually starting to give instructions, which is interesting.
Oh yeah, it's crazy because now you can't even sometimes tell the difference between what's legal and illegal in terms of cannabis, because the illegal sector is just copying sort of what it looks like to be legal. So
Oh,
people
yeah.
have all these things in their homes and they think they're legal and they're not. It's kind of hard to tell the difference these days. That's happening already with psilocybin, with all the online. I mean, you can order it online here, but it's just not totally legal. But I really think that I'm guessing that in 10 years, all of that is going to happen in Canada.
That would be amazing. Another reason why I might have to head up there. It's a little cold and dark, but other than that, I'm into it. Yeah, that's a really interesting discussion, like black market cannabis versus legal cannabis. Like what I've been seeing, I know a number of both underground and legal growers, and it's really interesting to see like the differences in the products, because just straight cannabis, like the flower or bud, like when bought at a store, often doesn't have as much, like anywhere close to as much like trichome, like crystalline stuff on the outside.
Yeah, they're just limited on how they can grow it, so they're not allowed to do a lot of the things you need to do to make it really good.
Right. Interesting. And I bet there's also like machine issues. So like if it's hand trimmed, it's a little bit more delicate and like higher quality in the end. And yeah, there's a lot of factors that go into this. And I think things will develop over time. But yeah, it's just going to take time. In the economics, like once they get shown, in a place like Oregon or wherever, other environments might copy it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I wonder in Oregon. I mean, it's sort of if they're having to be supervised and it's one session, the commercial enterprise, it's more of a service rather than a good that they're selling.
Right. The like cost to manufacture the product is so much smaller than the service cost.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think that's going to be one of the biggest scary, I don't know, things that the industry is going to have to think about. Like, okay, you want to have this psychedelic company, but it's really kind of hard to make a lot of money providing, just psilocybin for your customers. Like it's more about the services and add-ons and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but maybe it's the services and the add-ons that really, really help people and make a difference in their life. So if the commercial aspect is encouraging companies to make more clinics available and make, sessions available, which is happening, I think that's a good thing, because it means, there's better access to all of that.
Is NeonMind looking at getting involved in Oregon at all?
Right now, we're not.
Yeah.
But Better Plant does have a line of cannabis topicals in the Oregon. It's called Right and Well. It's actually it's a really nice product, and it's in. I think we're in about 20 dispensaries right now. We just launched during COVID, so it wasn't the best time. But, we add a couple of dispensaries every month, and so hopefully in a year it'll be more available. And it's actually been really nice to be able to work in Oregon compared to trying to do business in certain other states or even in Canada for cannabis. So I think that it's probably a great place to do business, but I imagine there's going to be a lot of very eager entrepreneurs getting set up in Oregon right now to sort of offer the therapeutic experience of psilocybin. And I wonder how available it's going to be, and how, if the market's going to get oversaturated really quickly, or if they're going to regulate that.
Yeah, they've got 2 years to figure it out. It sounds like the business owner and the facilitators need to live in the state for 2 full years before facilitating or owning.
Right. So then in that case, I definitely won't be getting into Oregon because I've never lived in Oregon.
Right. I feel like
But
there are business opportunities where, larger groups will jump in, but it's
yeah,
kind of unclear how that's really going to look.
it's a good strategy though for them to keep it local. Like, why not? Right?
Yeah,
It's a
protect
good
your
step
state.
yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, if what happened in cannabis happens to psilocybin, then you can get into developing brands and brand recognition. And so then with that, you can kind of license products and go state to state. But I've been involved in trying to do that with cannabis, and it's a huge headache, like the way it's set up now. If it was to go federally legal, then I think I'd be more interested in pursuing it. But just after being in the cannabis business for years and seeing how difficult it is to operate, just when you can't, your money and no assets can leave the state, it's not fun,
Mm,
really. If you're
yeah.
outside the state, it's not really doable.
Yeah. I've been watching the Colorado cannabis industry for a long time, and it's really awkward that people are still traveling with tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars like weekly to
Yeah,
go
it's so
pay their bills
crazy.
manually for the
Yeah,
state.
yeah, that is kind of bizarre. I don't see how that really benefits the government having all that cash flowing around.
I don't either. It's more like federal restrictions and in my opinion, a lack of creative thinking on the part of the government, which is pretty typical, I guess. Like they could have figured out a way to solve that, but they didn't.
Yeah. Do you see any changes coming now that there's a new president on the horizon?
Um, well, those people who are probably going to win. I don't know if they announced it for real, but I kind of think they did. But I think they said they will federally decriminalize it and open up banking.
Yeah. So that will be a huge step and make life a lot easier for some of those people that are lugging cash around.
Right.
Although
It would be,
that's not a terrible problem to have, I guess.
well, it's kind of crazy. Like, so my girlfriend would get told to drive from where we are to Denver state capital with, sometimes like 70 or $80,000 once a week on
Wow.
a set schedule, same time, same day of the week. It's like this is the perfect setup for robbery. And like I've
Yeah.
only heard of a couple robberies that way, but it's like
Wow.
kind of really dangerous. It like puts, citizens at risk.
Yeah. And yet she was never robbed.
Thankfully. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
But I was nervous about it pretty regularly. Like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, the fact that the state doesn't necessarily recognize that they're putting people at harm or care about it, like that's kind of a big deal for me. And are they going to change? I don't know. Like compassion isn't really their strong suit for anything related to drugs.
Yeah.
So TBD. I'm hopeful that things will change and it's not everybody. It's just, I don't know. I get a little bit negative when I talk about the government generally, but there
No.
are individuals in there that are amazing.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious, like your next 6 months, it sounds like you've kicked off your preclinical trials. You're looking at an IPO for NeonMind. Like what else is going on there that you might want to talk about?
Well, if our IPO goes successfully, hopefully we'll be public. By December, January, we will have raised, $4 or $6 or $8 million, and then we can get, things get a lot more interesting when you have money because then you can really look at all the options out there. And I think there's so much interesting research happening. Then there's sort of the clinical model that you were talking about. The name of our company, NeonMind, is kind of a hint at kind of where I'm interested is, things that enhance the mind. So I'm still very, very interested in medicinal mushrooms, and we're trying to get some products out as natural health products.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do so, you can make health claims. You can actually say, like, instead of just calling our coffee like smart coffee or something, we can say this actually enhances your memory or your cognitive ability. But when we go through to look at what researchers to support lion's mane or reishi or some of these different things. There's not a lot out there that's been sort of approved and stamped by the government for ingredients to create an easy path to make these claims. So, I can see us getting a little bit into some of the medicinal mushroom stuff, which I think is really, really interesting, and seeing if we can do some smaller trials. I don't know if preclinical or clinical, but when you're not doing them to go all the way to demonstrate a drug, but you just need a little bit of evidence of efficacy, then it's not as expensive. But I would kind of like to come up with some products that say, this improves your memory, this coffee improves your memory, or maybe this chocolate bar improves your memory, or, actually makes you smarter, which would be kind of cool. So those are kind of interesting. I'm also really interested in any research going on around preventing Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And dealing with brain damage. And Dr. William Panenka, he's actually the largest shareholder, or the second largest shareholder at NeonMind. And he's kind of designed some of our trials and helping design our phase 2 trials. He's a neurosurgeon and a psychiatrist, and he's an expert in brain trauma. And so I'm hoping that, we're going to do some interesting work together. And really, it's like there's so many different things and so many different ways you could go with psychedelics. There's different substances. We started looking at LSD a little bit because actually just some of the scientists I was working with said, well, if you use psilocybin to do this, you can use LSD to do it and to deal with food addiction. But I'm still very, very interested in drug addiction and how psychedelics can help people get off drugs. And so if I come across any companies that are focused on this, any clinical work, if I can get involved in that or help in any way, to be a co-sponsor or something like that, that would be something I'd be really interested in. So, in addition to following through on what we're doing for a weight loss drug, which is, it doesn't seem like the obvious choice for psychedelics, but for me, it was interesting because it's like a path that's not being taken by so many people. So I felt like there was more opportunity there. But I also think there's a huge need with drug addicts.
Yeah.
I'd love to do something in that area. And so now that I've said it, the universe will bring it to me, especially if I say it on a podcast.
Yeah, making it public. Yeah, that's neat. I'm really hopeful for psychedelic science and people dealing with substance use disorder, overeating even, or like even undereating. Like anorexia is a big deal. Bulimia is a big deal.
There's quite a few studies going on in terms of treating bulimia and anorexia.
Cool. So I'm thinking I'm going to be watching you pretty closely. Might, give me a heads up when, or we'll know. I get so much news, finance news now on psychedelics via email. It's kind of crazy.
I'll add you to our email distribution list.
Great.
Until you ask to be removed.
Yeah, perfect. It's really just kind of amazing how much is happening and how many new ideas there are. And how funny is it that like people have been so focused on PTSD and depression that like weight loss was kind of, not even touched, which cuts such an obvious, like interesting angle.
It seems obvious now, but when I was talking to doctors a year ago, they were laughing at me and saying, Are you kidding me? Like there were doctors that didn't even want to work with me because they said, that's not legitimate. Like, what are you talking about? And so I feel like now people are like, oh, it's obvious. But when we started this, people said, what are you talking about? Like, are you nuts?
Well, that's at the early stages of the psychedelic, revolution that we're in right now. So of course, like the analogy that comes to mind for me is, it wasn't purely drugs, but Grateful Dead Mountain Girl. There's like a lot of stories about her, like, folding in with the Grateful Dead and I think losing a lot of weight after hanging out with them a lot. So, really interesting to me. I think she was married to Jerry at one point too, but, she clearly used a bunch of LSD if she was hanging out with those guys. So there's something there, historically at least. And I'm sure there was a number of cases in the past that you could pull from if you needed to. But sounds like you're on your way. You've got kind of government approval, university people are working on it. So it's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got to feel nice.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm really excited to get some of our first data out of this study. So probably in about 3 weeks.
And how does that work? Are you going to make it public, or is it kind of just filed to like Health Canada for your approvals?
No, so ultimately, all of the scientists that are working on these trials, they definitely want to publish, and
Okay.
they're well published, and so they follow all these protocols, and it'll be peer reviewed and probably published in well recognized journals and stuff. So that's the ultimate goal. How long it takes, I'm not exactly sure. When I asked them, they laughed. They think it's going to take a long time, but they're going to be probably talking to me and giving me some some answers in terms of what we're discovering as we go along. So I'm excited about finding that out.
Yeah, that's excellent. Wow. Well, very cool. Anything we might have missed, Penny?
Oh, not that I can think of right now.
All right. We kind of covered a lot. I initially really just wanted to talk to you about like a lot of the protocols and federal, government interactions around getting approval, but we went far wider than I planned.
Well, it was fine.
Good. This will come out in January or February, I believe. And, by then you should have a lot more going on. But where could people find NeonMind or Better Plant Sciences on the web?
There's a couple websites. You can go to neonmind.com and you can order our coffee. Then you can click on the investor site if you want more details, or you can go right to neonmindbiosciences.com.
All right. Well, Penny White, I really appreciate being on the show, and I hope we get to follow up again in the future.
Joe, thank you. It's been really fun. Thanks for having me.
And there you have it, Penny White, former CEO of NeonMind, and I hope you liked it. I think we covered some interesting ground. There's a lot of work left to do for all of these psychedelic companies, including NeonMind. You can try out their stuff now, some of it, the legal stuff. And I actually haven't dug into, so I got a whole bunch of instant. It was pretty good. Kind of tastes, somewhat like instant coffee, but you can tell there's like nutritional supplements in there. So you kind of feel better about drinking that than traditional instant coffee. And I haven't dug into the kind of more coffee that you put in your home brew. Your coffee machine. So I'll probably try that this week. Maybe I'll report back. But it was cool just knowing there was extra stuff in my coffee that was helpful. Anyway, and not a sponsorship here, just kind of mentioning that they sent me some stuff to check out. Yeah, I think that's it for now. So check out NeonMind, see if there's anything interesting there for you. There's probably going to be some interesting developments in all of these great psychedelic companies over the next few years. So stay tuned. Yeah, and I think that's it. So again, we have Navigating Psychedelics for Clinicians and Therapists coming up in March, and I think we're getting close to selling out. So if you want to jump in, please do. Psychedeliceducationcenter.com to learn more. We've also got Navigating Psychedelics for Students and the Psychedelic Curious. That starts up in really early March, taught by Rob and Alyssa. So that's going to be a cool one for non-clinicians. And what else is going on? Oh yeah, film screening Friday, February 12th. Come on down. It's going to be fun. And I hope to see you all there. All right, that's it for now. Thank you all for listening to Psychedelics Today. This is Joe Moore signing off from Breckenridge, Colorado. See you on Friday. Bye-bye.